We're going to get started here at 5 minutes after the hour. Thank you for spending your Sunday with us. And if you feel called and would like to, I welcome you to drop your locations in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from, how your body is feeling today, and just a reminder to stay on mute, to not cloud the airways, but would love to hear and see where folks are tuning in from. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Mara, for that announcement too. Beautiful. Massachusetts, Palestine, Palestina. Thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in. Tennessee, Texas, PA, Minneapolis. Thank you, Lenape Land, Chicago. Yo, what's up, San Diego? Good to see you. Thank you so much. Aren't these birds so wonderful? It's so nice to hear the birds coming back in spring. The Piscataway territory, thank you. Okay. And I really want to thank TanyaMarck and team for bringing these beautiful soundscapes to our space. I hope they really welcome you and begin building the landscape in for today. Baghdad, thank you. Wow, all over, international conversations going on today. Thank you. Okay. Chi-Town, Chicago. Wonderful. Okay. Mate, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are in Sacred Pathways, a journey through psychedelic care and healing modalities, brought to you by the People of Color Psychedelic Collective. What an honor it is to be with this beautiful family and such incredible speakers. My name is Michaela Belamico. I'm here in Kumeyaay Territory, San Diego, California. I'm an educator, researcher, teacher here in the psychedelic community and centering the voices of mothers here in the space, families, our queer community as well, here to steward and create accessible and compassionate care for all bodies, all folks. And it is with great privilege that I'm joined by these incredible speakers. I remember when we were in our planning Zoom call, and I was like, wow, like this is a gift for these minds to be here. So you're in a very special place this morning. This is better than church, truly. I'd rather be here than in a chapel right now. So I will introduce these speakers with their bios, and we're going to get into an amazing conversation today with them, centering our motivations here in the community, liberation generally, and cultivating right relationship, which is always a very needed and very missing conversation in the psychedelic community. So without further ado, our speakers, we are joined by Victor Alfonso Cabral. He is a bilingual Afro-Latin social worker, psychotherapist, policy strategist, and cultural worker dedicated to healing, justice, and systemic transformation. His work spans trauma-informed therapy, drug policy reform, community advocacy, centering historically marginalized communities in healing spaces. Let's give it up for our good relative. Thank you, Victor, for being here, for spending time with us today. It's such an honor to be speaking with you. Logina Mostafa, thank you so much. Logina is the founder and director of Queering Existentialism, a community education and connection initiative based in NYC. Their workshops focus on practical and accessible pathways toward communal structure, secure attachment, prioritizing the exchange of liberating ideas focused on mental health and altered states, Logina's work is rooted in the frameworks of transformative justice, healing-centered harm reduction, mutual aid, and pleasure activism. Their academic research has focused on the intersection of bodily autonomy, reproductive justice, and equitable access to psychedelically assisted psychotherapy. Thank you so much, Lugina, really a person after my own heart. Thank you. And of course, our beloved friend, TanyaMarck. Thank you. And Pluto, a very magical beagle, founders of Vámonos, a healing arts and care practice that's deeply rooted in curanderismo and community service. TanyaMarck is also the co-founder with Nick Venjoni of Queer Spirit, or QS. Vámonos and QS prioritize accessible care for our vulnerable and marginalized communities. Klasamati, TanyaMarck, thank you so much for being here. Noor Ramadhan is an Iraqi-Canadian trauma-informed breathwork facilitator and psychedelic researcher dedicated to promoting mental health awareness, harm reduction, and psychedelically assisted therapy among marginalized communities. As the co-founder of the Arab Psychedelic Society, she is committed to bridging the gap between Arab communities and psychedelics through culturally sensitive education, research, community support, and therapeutic interventions. Much love. Thank you, Noor Ramadhan. Like I said, just top of the line, grounded, rooted, sacred, important, much needed voices in this space. And what a pleasure it is to be having this conversation today around our motivations, liberation generally, and cultivating right relationships with our plant allies, our fungus allies, and the world and the sacred earth that we get to live with. So I would love to open up the container of conversation today. Do we have any needs, concerns, questions before we get started with our panel from any of our panelists or anyone in the chat even? If you have accessibility needs, please let us know in the chat. We have helpers. And for any of our panelists, is there anything that we'd like to say before we open up this container of conversation today? Okay, we feel ready to go. We're like, let's slide right in. Okay, all right, let's get started. So the structure of our time here too, I just want to mention, because I like doing that, is just, what is the flow of the space today? So we're going to get into a beautiful conversation today about Ife. Can you let me know when we're going to pause here, maybe like 45 minutes after the hour? How long do you want us to float in this? What are your thoughts?
We can pause 55 minutes after the hour. Yeah.
Okay, bueno. Okay. So until 55 minutes after the hour, we're going to be in a magical and very special conversation. And then we'll have some really powerful breakout sessions led by each one of the practitioners. So really take note of how you're feeling in your body when these folks are speaking, how you're connecting with them, and how would you like to stay connected with them, because each one of them is going to have a breakout room. And so we'll describe what those breakout rooms are going to be. We'll be in those breakout rooms for just further integration, conversation. Breathwork is going to be offered, cultivating inner wisdom, exploring identity and belonging, movement, meditation. So really track how you're feeling with each speaker, and then you will choose which breakout room to come to. And then after that time, we'll come back together for a group integration together and just a collective grounding before we go off for the rest of our day. So that will be kind of the general flow of our day today. So getting into our conversation with your loving permission. So just by a show of hands, like everyone's feeling good, everyone's ready to get in a conversation. Okay, sorry, it's just like always radical consent, play party space stuff. I'm like, okay, everyone, it's a yes. Okay. So let's open it up. Let's just crack right open. So what motivated you to do the work that you do? I really want to explore our why today. Why are you here? Not just who are you, but like why are you here? So we'll start that. What motivated you to do the work that you do? So does anyone want to pop on first? I'm a teacher who does not mind calling on people, so I got you on that too.
I guess I could go first.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Noor, and I guess I'll answer the why through storytelling and just talking about like how I got here and my journey into psychedelic assisted therapy and all of that. So I really started with around 7 to 8 years ago, where I had my own personal experience with MDMA, and it was not in a therapeutic setting at all, and it was more of, yeah, more recreational use, but it just had such profound effects on me, where during that time, it was when I first moved to Canada, from the Arab region, and yeah, just wiped away my depression and the anxiety that I was going through for a good 4 months. And that just like brought up a lot of curiosity, like how did this help me, this one experience help me? And so I started looking into the research and learned that there's so much research out there about MDMA assisted therapy, through maps. And I remember reading about the research, and it was mostly very much focused on veterans at the time. And yeah, like reading these people's stories, especially the veterans who, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but I am from Iraq, and just like seeing that a lot of these veterans that were given MDMA assisted therapy were veterans that served in Iraq. And yeah, it just brought a lot of like questions to my mind as to like, what about, the victims of war, or yeah, the people that still live there. It's like the Iraqis that have gone through the war, especially after the US invaded Iraq. They've gone through tremendous trauma that a lot of it is actually not accounted for, and there's like not much awareness around it. So yeah, it was just very interesting for me to see this like huge difference or discrepancy, I guess. So that's what brought up this curiosity to me and wanting to fill in that gap within the psychedelic field. So I got into research and I started doing my own research studies. I've worked on a clinical trial looking at alcohol use disorder and treating it with psilocybin assisted therapy. Um, yeah, and I guess, yeah, because I didn't see, I guess, my community of people represented in the psychedelic space or in research in general, that's why I started the Arab Psychedelic Society, where the goal of it is to really bridge psychedelic science, and developing treatment protocols, trainings, yeah, spreading awareness, reducing stigma, increasing harm reduction throughout the Arab community, because these medicines are reaching our communities, and we need to be spreading more awareness around them, just so people are using them more safely and are educated. And yeah, and then another thing that I found is, when we talk about psychedelic assisted therapy for the Arab community, it's going to look very different from what's already being done in the West. I guess the biggest difference is, collectivism versus individualism, and how does that take into account through therapy? Because in the Arab community, we do this like sort of healing work in community. We don't do it separate from community, and so what I find is that, when I was trained in MDMA assisted therapy, I found that MDMA assisted therapy is really much focused on the individual. There's like group work it is being developed, but it's not there yet. So that's where I want to kind of focus my work right now. So through the Arab Psychedelic Society, we joined the MAPS MDMA assisted therapy training, where we had 18 Arab practitioners get trained in MDMA assisted therapy. And a huge gap that we saw, and like a huge concern that came up during that training, was how is this therapy relevant to our communities that are going through ongoing trauma, like whether that's, people living under occupation, or people that have gone through political violence, that are actually not safe even in their own countries. So it's a very complete different conversation than talking to someone who has that, I guess, privilege to go back to a safe environment and a safe home. So yeah, and then, it's things like the CAPS-5 doesn't really account those experiences, if that makes sense. Um, So yeah, so to talk about that training, the Arab Psychedelic Society is now working on getting these practitioners an experiential training, so that, and we're doing this through a group therapy protocol, where we're bringing in Bruce and Marcella, which are the lead trainers at MAPS, and we're doing a experiential training where basically these 18 practitioners, Arab practitioners from all over the Arab world, from Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, we're all going to come together, and we developed this group protocol to give them that experiential training so that they can go back to their communities and start doing this work. And yeah, it's like one of the participants on this study is actually based in Ramallah in Palestine, and she's working on a study looking at doing MDMA assisted therapy for Palestinians that have been tortured in Israeli prisons. So yeah, like really exciting work is coming up, and it's been really challenging like figuring this out, but I'm really glad and grateful for, yeah, just like the Arab practitioners that are believing in this work and trusting the process and all of that. Yeah, and I guess another thing that comes up through this whole conversation is when we're looking at treating the Arab community with psychedelic assisted therapy, um, is that yeah, like that conversation again of PTSD comes up again, because PTSD is a term that was developed for veterans specifically, but what we're dealing with for most of their community, not all, is this ongoing trauma. So it's definitely something that we need to work through. But yeah, again, just really grateful to have this opportunity to be in the space and to learn from a lot of great mentors. And yeah, I guess I'll pause there and I'll give it to someone else to continue.
Wow, thank you so much. And so many of the threads I heard was around community-based healing, not individualism, and recognizing that integration is like even a privilege to be able to go be safe in the place that you call home, and post-traumatic stress being like almost illusionary to really like the reality, which is like current traumatic stress or like ongoing and present traumatic stress in a lot of communities. So thank you so much for just naming those really important pieces that get so missed, and why voices like you matter is because of your perspective. So thank you so much for everything that you've done, and continue to do. I yeah, want to invite the next person to come up. Thank you so much for your share, Noor.
Hi, can I share?
Oh, our panelists are sharing right now. We will be able to share and break out. Yeah. Lugina?
I can go next. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, cool. So, hello everyone. There are definitely parallels and threads with what Noor shared in my story as well. For some context, I was born in Egypt and then immigrated to the US when I was 3 years old, and then lived between Lenape land and predominantly white Midwestern Iowa. My first psychedelic experience was 10 years ago. Sorry about the background sounds. And growing up with a split religious household and feeling really lost in my identity. My recreational experiences with psilocybin were absolutely life-changing in terms of processing trauma, and even like having a vantage point to directly experience spirituality through like a loving, expansive lens. So I started to have these experiences. I was really focused on bodily autonomy and reproductive justice as the first person in my lineage to ever have the privilege of financial independence and the autonomy that I have, and just acting from a very rebellious place to assert that as I tied into my activism and other spaces. So I ended up having a full spectrum of recreational experiences that were at times really traumatizing and at times really healing, depending on the community that was around me. I didn't know about set setting and support. I didn't know about these other resources. So I shifted my focus in my Master's of Public Health program to psychedelic assisted psychotherapy and equity specifically in the field. And I got involved in and that was a few years ago. I got involved in the mainstream psychedelic space and found that I was finally connecting with people around, in existential, expansive ways around psychedelics, but I was still compartmentalizing other parts of my identity, my queerness. I'm polyamorous. I'm also a sex worker. So I was experiencing judgment in these other ways and then realizing the lack of a collective liberation-based framework across different parts of the psychedelic space. And there's a lot of grief that I went through, like in community and as I was jumping from community to community, realizing like, there's so many common bridges, but there's kind of an isolated feeling to this rather than like calling people in, accessible education around harm reduction, and integration in a way that centers what is political, but to me is the validity and the existence of my lineage and my people. So that's why I started doing the community organizing work that I do now. And I just was speaking about psychedelics at a reproductive justice conference, and there's so much to learn about organizing strategies around stigmatized pathways to healing. And so kind of taking that, oh, I don't belong anywhere because my identity is so schismed, and transmuting that into bridges that really center cultural competence and how we're reaching people. Because when I started to have structured ceremonies or an idea of intentionality, it really further transformed the healing impact of psychedelics in my life. And then also the role of communal secure attachment and beyond hyper-individualism in healing modalities. But I'll close up by saying, realizing group therapy and academia can't be the only spaces where we're healing together, processing together, learning together. So I try to make it fun and engaging, and I do multiple like grassroots workshops, and it's been deeply rewarding. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Autonomy and rebellion is activism and liberation. I'm really feeling that in a lot of us. And this is the second time that like recreational spaces have come up. And I also just want to name like not even downplaying recreation as not valuable, but like a meaningful space of learning. Hella pitfalls, but still like an entry point for a lot of us, truly. And then I love the note about like genre diversity, like these spaces can teach each other, polyamory spaces, social justice spaces, like we all actually can trade notes with one another. So I just, I really appreciate bringing this conversation to many different spaces and letting them inform what we do here in the psychedelic community. So thank you so much from also a fellow sex worker and like poly person. Much appreciation for your vulnerability. Yeah, anyone else who else is feeling good to rise up and share their motivations
It
today?
feels good. It feels good to jump in.
Yes.
Y'all, could we just take a moment like and just breathe and maybe a shimmy and a shake and a move? Yeah. It's like energy. Thank you to my fellow panelists that just shared beautiful medicine and magic, and to Victor who's coming after me. Super appreciate that, and just bringing in the vibe of community. Thank you for asking Michaela the why. The why is exactly what here. It's community for me. It's care, and it's being with groups of people that I identify with. And that is such a huge part of my story, y'all. My decall work began in 2010. And just in case you need the reference, I was born in 1970. So my decall work began in 2010 with a fellow therapist saying, hey, TanyaMarck, outside of education, teaching high school, and outside of 12-step recovery, because I'm also a person in recovery of 1989, who are you? And that sent me on a huge journey. And the first place I landed was movement, because I was born and raised I played sports. So movement was a way that I started to find my way back to me. And through that movement, I began to question, which could have, I have mad respect for 12-step, y'all. I spent 30 plus years there. I do continue to identify as a person in recovery who happens to work with other plant medicines in very sacred ways. So I took my time and worked with my mentors of 30 plus years and said, I have this question too, like, who am I outside of all of these things that I've been doing for so long? And through finding movement in my body, through slowly learning what it meant to disconnect from a group where, to be honest with y'all, it was everything. 12-step was my social, my romantic, my recovery. It was everything. And so I began to slowly disconnect from that. And just like the universe and in my spiritual practice, which I've had in place since a very young age, then there came a person in 2017 that said, hey, I know of this shaman who's doing one-on-one work with medicine, and I know you're a person in recovery, but my instincts are telling me to share this with you. And that started a curiosity for me. And I slowly, with the help of mentors, and the help of the shaman and my doctors, was able to work out a care plan where I could experience working with this the medicine of ayahuasca, with really deep intentions of figuring out, who am I? Who am I besides all of these other things that I have been fulfilling in my life? And so that's where my journey began. And really, y'all, the truth is, here we are in 2025. I left education 30 days before lockdown is when the universe took me out of my classroom, literally. And it has just been a continued journey of figuring out who I am, being raised to assimilate. I have family from Michoacan, Huastec, the Yucatan, Valladolid, and I also am Native American, Shoshone, on my father's side. And so I was raised to assimilate as a means of enduring and surviving. So that has also been something that I have slowly disconnected from and reconnected to my roots. I have reconnected to my indigenous roots through my spiritual practices. I identify as being a witch. I too am a poly person. I have been in spiritual practice for a very long time, and I want to thank all the mentors throughout my life. There has always been some iteration of spiritual practice. And really what brings me here, my why today, is to be working in groups like this, where I identify, right, with who people are here, as well as my queer community. Those are two identities, y'all, that to be honest with you, through assimilation, I wasn't very connected to. So my work here today with breath work and movement and care circles has really just been about that. It's been about community. It's been about care. And yes, I do have intimate relationships with a few of the plant medicines that I work with, and I'm very sacred and reverent with that work. I do support other people who come from recovery and may want to look at, hey, is there a way to work with these medicines without imbibing? And it's like, absolutely, yes, there is, because these medicines invite us to cultivate connection, right? And so I proudly say I'm a plant parent. I am tending to plants in my yard, growing lavender, growing food, growing flowers, and learning how to tend to that care, continuing to learn to tend to the care of myself, to the care of my communities. I'm really honored. Queer Spirit has partnered with UCLA, and I get the honor of walking 10 people through how to be of support and how to be peer supporters and how to care, not just for themselves, but how to go out there and prioritize care of our community. So that's what brings me here, is care, y'all. And I'm excited to share some of that with y'all later. Y'all are in for some good medicine with Victor. And thank you again, Logina and Noor. Y'all are amazing. And it's been amazing to be on panel with y'all today. Gracias, y'all. Ashe.
Ashe, ashe. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Came with a care fire. Like, I was really into Care Bears, and I just feel like you just radiate that from your fucking chest. So thank you so much for your boundless care, and just so much of what I'm hearing in a lot of our shares is this like group healing. And I just love what you mentioned about a care plan that included like many modalities from many different disciplines coming together, really pour into you. And I just really feel that reaching across the aisle and like pulling from all these different systems makes care that much safer, that much more multifaceted. So just thank you for naming that so much. And movement, somatics, like I just love how much healing lives in the body. So thank you also for mentioning that. So it's so important to me as well. And thank you, Victor, so much for like being here and holding the space while we all just got real chatty. And I would love to hand it to you to share a little bit of your story and your why.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela, and thank you, Logina, Noor, and TanyaMarck for everything you'll share. Um, yeah, so I'm a licensed social worker, policy strategist, culture worker, and yeah, my why in this work, I'll share that my mother and father are from Dominican Republic. I was born in Rio Piedras, Puerto Rico, where my mom was working as a maid while she was pregnant with me, and eventually we moved to New York City before I landed in Reading, Pennsylvania in the mid 90s with my family, and I've been here ever since. Um, I came to this work actually, like mushrooms showed up a couple times in my life before I ever thought about before I sought them out. The first time was my cousins introduced them to me as something that grows on the shit in the field in Dominican Republic in the uh um uh in the countryside, and said we'll laugh a lot if we take it together. I was in like seventh grade. My mom found out and it didn't go well for me. Needless to say, I never took the mushroom at that time, but that was the first time it showed up. And then I heard about it from a friend of mine in college who was older than me and had gone through some things, and shared how he had found some healing from his childhood trauma through that. And at the time, I didn't really understand what he was sharing, but it sounded interesting, and so I kind of archived that story. And I was going through my own things at that time. I was struggling with my health. I was uh, um, about 300 pounds and just like getting my and then that's not to like put any value on any type of body, but for me at the time it was I was not in a healthy place. And I was kicked out of the college that I was at the time. I lost my apartment, and so I found myself in this place in my life where like all the trauma that I had been holding on to and didn't know how to process, didn't understand that I even had trauma, was catching up to me. Now looking back, I can see that. And so I ended up leaving school at that time and coming back to Reading, where I'm from, working swing shifts in a steel mill here, where I grew up. And through that process, I started to kind of turn my life around. It started with weight loss, and then I was like, this isn't, um, I lost the weight. I looked good, but I didn't feel great. And so I realized that, and I started going to therapy. In about 2016 or so, I realized that I had kind of hit a wall with therapy, and that was when the story my friend had told me about his experience, and some whispers I had heard on podcasts at the time, etc. I think I had heard Rick Doblin at some point talking about his work. And so I decided to try psilocybin, and that was my first experience with the medicine. And that kind of set me off on this work. Right after the summer after my first experience, I had already transitioned a few years earlier out of my work in the steel mill and was working with children in the community where I grew up at. As a truancy officer, then eventually as a therapist and as a case manager. And so I had this experience and I had decided I wanted to be a therapist. And so I went from having this like really profound experience into a program that really started to teach me about systems, about how trauma impacts us, and it served as a like a long form integration for me in some ways. I did my graduate research on psychedelics. It wasn't very good, but um, I did it, and throughout that time, I started to seek out trainings. Um, and yeah, and I think I came into this work because as I was working in my community and seeing how people were on medications for like 4 or 5 years and just in this place I was stuck and just kind of being fed to the system, I was like, why aren't we discussing these like really profound medicines? And I was having so much healing myself, and people who I love and care about were also finding healing. Um, so I think there was a part of me that wanted to make sure that my community had access to it, and so And I think I had a bit of a savior complex too, that as I've like worked through my stuff over the years with the medicines, like, um, that's emerged, right? And something that needed to be looked at. So, um, when I graduated with my master's, I ended up, working for the governor's office for a few years in policy, did some policy work in there around psychedelics, and then eventually made my transition into the space full time. So for the last 3.5 years or so, until this past December, I worked in training and education as a director of policy, and then as a assistant director of community care at Naropa, where we focused on having training and education that was accessible, that was taught from a decolonized healing justice perspective, working with Dr. Diana Quinn and Sarah Lewis and some other dope folks there. That's now transitioned into another program, but I guess my why behind this work was really my own work. First and foremost, like me realizing that the more that I was able to um, work through my shit, the more aligned and the more intentional I would be able to show up for my community and for my family and the institutions that I work within. And I think I'm at a place now um, where I'm realizing some of the pitfalls of that I fell into in this work, right? And being um, having the opportunities that I've had to be a voice in this space, and how I found myself perpetuating a lot of the things that I was trying um, to push back on, or to shed light on. And so I've slowed down. I've gone back to working in communities now, uh, just seeing folks, ordinary, therapy with folks, just sitting with people, and supporting youth in by developing liberatory programming and trying to start a school in Chester, Pennsylvania, which has been called like the Flint, Michigan of the East Coast. So that feels important, especially during this time, to be with our communities, with everything that's going on. Um, and Yeah, and I think I'm trying to really get to the bottom of why now, and just look in the mirror and be more honest about why am I doing this work? And I think I see the promise of these medicines. I see the profound healing that's come for me, for the people around me, for the people I've had the pleasure to sit for, internationally or here in the States. Um, and I also see an opportunity for us to really like look in the mirror, both individually and collectively, and really start to be honest with each other about what we're up to. So um, yeah, that's the gist of why. I don't know if there was any clarity there, but
No,
I'm trying to
live.
figure it
Thank
out.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so much of I mean, what a journey you've been on. And so much of what I'm hearing too is around, yeah, that body consciousness, what are our bodies telling us, and not in a way that is like externally influenced, but like internally understood. So thank you for that. And also visibilizing your walk through therapy. I feel like in male bodies, that's like rare to even just talk about. Like I was doing therapy for myself and recognizing its own limitations, but then entering the space yourself. And sounds like you've served in so many different places. And so I just love that you're visibilizing the many roles that we have, like not just a facilitator, not just a guide, right? But like within a large construct of how you can support this movement. And I really appreciate you speaking to like pausing, being reflexive, looking at the personalities that are arising in us as we're, in this space. And I'm always reminded by that like WAIT acronym, like why am I talking? And it's like, why am I taking up space here? Why am I, you know, present in this? And so just thank you for a lot of the wisdom that you shared in your share. And we have, about 14 minutes left of our panel, and I really want to get into maybe just a couple of you, if you feel inspired to answer the question around, we mentioned care, we mentioned culture working, and I am curious, what does it look like cultivating a relationship with plants and medicine outside of being in the altered state. And some people might consider this integration, like all of the practices that kind of hold medicine work together that isn't necessarily ingestion. So if maybe one or two of you feel inspired to kind of like open up this conversation around the practices outside of ingestion that make your practice really rich.
I'll jump in. That feels good. Thank you. Well, to be honest, I feel like the work with medicine was an invitation home, and the work and care around that has been making sure that I continue to develop a care toolkit that includes what that entails. And so when I say, being a plant parent and self-care, those are the cultivated connections that I cultivate. There's a pot of lavender and white sage that was just gifted to me for this particular session that's on the stove this morning. So it's the grounding, it's the care, it's the community. Listen, when you leave a community after 30 some years and being older and having to reconnect and find community and doing so from a mindful way, has involved a lot of vulnerability of showing up to both virtual and in-person spaces and saying, like, how do I feel here? Do I belong here? Is this a place that feels aligned? So I feel like the medicines have said, here is your invitations home. And the pathway has been the care, not just care for myself, it's care for other people. It's learning to live authentically as me. A lot of my story involved not being authentic for my first 30 some, years of life, or whatever that was. So that I believe is they are living, breathing energies that call for daily tending. And that is the way that I walk my talk and live my values in that way. And believe me, it involves recreation and fun and joy and pleasure and all of that goodness. And it's not dependent on there having to be, and the way that I've been taught from my elders is that once I have a connection with that medicine, it's up to me, between me and medicine and source, to continue that cultivated connection. So how I go about doing that is also checking in with those medicines, honoring them on the altars, sharing in educational ways, holding space for other people. So yeah, there's a multitude of tools that happen outside of my physical work with the medicine. And I really appreciate that being named in spaces, because I don't think it's named enough. So appreciate that ask. Thank you. Ashe.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, anyone else, other activities outside of your journey space that really make your practice rich?
I could share a little bit. I think everything from like I think now everything, the richness of like my experiences, it happens outside of the journey space for me all the time. And I think it's like, how do um I have two young daughters with 12 and 5 years old. I'm married. So like, how do I show up in my household? How do I show up in my community? Um, how do I show up in my relationships? And how do I tend to myself? How am I taking care of myself before I try to show up for other people? So I think a lot of like um how I integrate or how I practice outside of those journeys is by just like trying to live life fully, and realizing and through this work also that a lot of times we look at, or I looked at medicine as like I was gonna get to this place where I didn't have to deal with the hard shit anymore. And the reality is that these medicines actually just help you feel more of all of it, right? So like it's not only like, yeah, there's joy and there's rest and there's like raving with your friends and there's like all of these beautiful things, and like then you look at what's happening in the world and it hurts on a different level when you're open in that way. And so like um I think that also the practice of just trying to be with the suffering that's part of life also. Um, so in that regard, like just being with what is, because like I think the medicine space and ceremony can also become a place where we run to. So
Thank you. Regina?
Is it okay if I quickly add something?
This is your space.
Okay, all right,
Yes,
cool. Okay,
please.
you said a couple of people.
Oh,
Victor,
yeah.
yeah, Victor, that just really resonated with me. A quote I come back to often is that it's not a sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. And realizing, we can't control the truth of the grief and all the pain and the suffering that emerges. I recently had a breakthrough during a ceremony where I was like, oh, what if I'd comforted myself, my inner child work, how that ties into my, um, rituals and practices. And I have a workshop coming up, Psychedelics and Liberation, integrating sacred grief. So just I'm realizing like, oh, it's not that I'm not healing well enough. And this is becoming another avenue that, where I'm like striving, but rather like that radical acceptance and bringing those attitudes of mindfulness to my relationship with integration and the plant medicines.
We're doing so well. Would Noor like to share anything? I would. Y'all were so chatty before. I wanted to but look at us go.
I mean, sure, yeah, I think you guys touched on a lot, but I guess just adding how important community work is. So I've been getting more involved in human rights activist circles with plant medicine and ceremonies. And what I find is because a lot of people feel so isolated after a beautiful plant medicine ceremony, they go back to their communities and they just feel so alone after feeling so much connection and love. And what I find like sustains that effect is being in community, is having people, a group of people to go back to lean on after having an experience like that. So yeah, and I think this even comes back to my point about collectivistic societies, or just like psychedelic assisted therapy in general. What's really missing is that communal piece that needs to be there afterwards. It's because when you have a therapist, like a psychedelic therapist, there's still that power dynamic, and I just find it so much more powerful when the community is there for each other and leans on each other. And yeah, I guess breath work is something that I do a lot, and I bring into a lot of plant medicine ceremonies and retreats. And I find that in combination with plant medicine really gives people that bigger capacity to hold whatever they're holding, whether it's like a huge emotion or grief or whatever. I find that it helps throughout like your day to day, if that makes sense, to hold or give that bigger capacity.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing these beautiful practices outside of the container of, I low-key like the escapism, right? Piece, and like coming back and like looking at what's real in our lives. And I would love to offer just if anyone has anything that they feel like they haven't been able to share yet, or like a final piece that feels really true for them. We do have a few more minutes here, and would love for people to just kind of soak the richness of the beauty that you all are before we get into the breakout room. So I'll just leave this space open for just a moment or two if anyone would like to maybe even share a piece that they learned that is really sitting with them that they'd like to share today.
I would like to quickly add another quote that was shared with me that was really impactful. We choose attachment over authenticity. And in looking back at my life, how much I resisted seeing, because I didn't want to be distant from my family members or like my communities that I had come from. But what does it look like to be a bridge so you can be caught on the other side? And it was my early psilocybin experiences where I would see myself falling through space. I'm like, oh, this is why I'm so attached to this. But being able to come on the other side and like, create the spaces, be the people that we wish we had earlier on the journey, has been so healing and rewarding. And so like, thank you to everyone here and beyond who's doing that work. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Regina. And I would also like to, ask the audience if there's any questions that you might have for these folks, or things that are sitting with you in a good way, or things that really like spoke to you about these shares. If you'd like to drop them into the chat, we'd love to read them out and maybe get a question answered. So if you have anything for the last couple of minutes of our panel before we get into the breakout rooms, would love to, yeah, direct those questions. We do have one question. Thank you so much for raising your hand. Go ahead. Thank you.
It's LA, and I just wanted to speak from my heart because that's what we're working on. And so what I really felt that resonated with the panel today was that it was a really good model of how we move from being regulated by the system to really opening up to what is more natural and is spirit-centered. So I just wanted to say that that was a really lovely process to see how we not dismantle, but we evolve and allow ourselves to move in connection with spirit. Because I want to be really transparent. In the beginning, the energy I was picking up was very not convoluted, but it was a mix. It's a mix of a lot of things. But behind it, I think it required faith to be able to wait for that spiritual side to come through. So I just wanted to say thank you to whatever the spiritual flow that is behind everything right now. Really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, LA. And it looks like we have one more. Thank you, Heather King, for being here.
It might be a brief question, but it might not be a brief explanation. So I think my question for all of you, you guys all talked about identities, and you talked about community and kind of like dismantling identity, or diving into identity and understanding, the ways that it works in various communities. And I think that the question that I have for everybody is like, there's a lot of, I don't know what to call it. It just feels kind of gross where when you bring up in circles, systems, especially access, people tend to be like, well, we're all the same under medicine. And like, well, in a perfect world, sure, but there's all these there's all these other intersections and barriers and all these systemic layers to the layers to the layers to the layers. And so I guess how do you keep that balance in holding your own identity and your place in these systems, but also like holding the two is true as well, that like, yes, we all are souls, but also.
And what a shame it is knowing that we're all souls, and yet in our bodies we are treated differently. If that is true, then why are some of these souls not treated the same, or like with kindness and compassion? And I just want to say that we are actually at time for the panel. And so that is actually like a beautiful kind of question to like ruminate with in a deep way. And maybe these breakout rooms can help with even this question and the question that was posed in the chat, which I'm going to read out right now, which says the vulnerability and openness to both joy and deep suffering is the challenge I find with clients as a therapist. How have you navigated in your personal and in practice with others in finding safety in that openness? So I think these are wonderful topics and literally like the core of the conversations that we're having. So I would love to transition us into the breakout rooms and to really sit with these beautiful questions. And as a reminder, I will share what the breakout rooms are. And then you'll be able to choose the breakout rooms by name, the name of the practitioner. So keep this in your mind, keep this in your heart, the shares that you heard today, who you're feeling really called to work with. For this time, we'll have about 45 minutes of breakout room container time. So with Victor Cabral, we're going to have Roots of Change, Cultivating Inner Wisdom for Social Transformation. It's going to explore intentional self-work, emotional intelligence. We'll write these into the chat as well. Thank you so much for that. It'll be around spiritual practices that can serve as powerful tools for systemic transformation, guided reflection and discussion. We will examine the ways that personal healing and inner alignment can drive meaningful change within communities and organizations. So huge. Thank you for offering that, Victor. The next one's going to be with Logina Mostafa. It's going to focus on exploring the relationship between identity, belonging, and psychedelic experiences through an intersectional and transformative justice lens. So that's that intersectionality that we were talking about just a moment ago. Reflect on the ways altered states have impacted our sense of belonging across socioeconomical models with interactive exercises and discussion. Thank you so much, Logina. That is a beautiful offering. With TanyaMarck, we're going to have breath work and movement. So curating and guiding breathwork, movement, body scanning, honoring and imbibing spiritually and energetically with the sacred spirits of our plant and earth allies and medicines, while exploring care and being in community with one another. The invite for this is to not physically imbibe, but to focus on how to connect in spiritual and energetic ways. Thank you so much. That's going to be with TanyaMarck. And then with Noor Ramadhan, we have breathwork and meditation. So breathwork as a powerful practice that uses intentional breathing techniques to regulate the nervous system, release emotional tension, access deeper states of awareness. This session will guide participants through a grounding meditation and a breathwork practice to promote mindfulness and somatic awareness before entering a short discussion where participants are invited to share their reflections on the event entirely. So hard to choose. Really good stuff here. And these people are accessible in other ways. So if you don't get to be with them now in this container, just know, like, please connect with these folks and we'll help you find ways to do that. So I'm going to hand it off to our admin team to get us connected to those breakout rooms. And I look forward to seeing you on the other side for our group integration. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you, lovely presenters. We're going to open up the breakout rooms.
We're just going to take a moment. Welcome everybody back. Thank you so much. Have your breakout rooms are so special. All right. So just want to offer a moment of just quiet reflection, coming back to, our center, and in some appreciation for the containers that we just sat in. We need, a couple more panelists back up, waiting for TanyaMarck to return. And maybe I'll keep the vibe rolling until Tanya gets back. Okay, there we go. Cool. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you, team. It was cool just hanging out in the lobby and listening to some music on a Sunday. And how was that? How was that for everyone? I would love to invite some folks to share their reflections in the chat, some gratitudes if you weren't able to share them yet, or just some insights and responses. So let the chat be filled with, your beautiful words. Would love to hear how your time was with our wonderful panelists and practitioners. And I would love to invite the panelists, practitioners to also share how that was for you. In a few words, how was the feeling, the sense of your breakout rooms today?
I'm happy to share. It was, we wish we had a lot more time together, which is all good, but it was, it was a good time together. I think it was beautiful to get to hear kind of where folks are at in their own journeys, and finding some time together to reflect on what are the ways that we can show up more intentionally and integrity and aligned in the work that we're doing, and also in our personal lives. So thank you to folks that joined and who were open and vulnerable in the space and showed up.
Thank you, Victor. And anyone else? Sentiments, sensations, how you breakout rooms?
I can go next. I'm feeling so grateful for um, the time that was shared in the space that was held collectively by everyone else. I always walk away from this conversation about identity, belonging, altered states, and community, learning something new from everyone shares, and it's really imbued me with a sense of hope, especially as we talked about like hyperlocal resistance, and what does it mean to sustainably build community and balance collectivism and individualism in a way that honors ourselves and also contributes to the collective. So I feel really energized, and at this time more than ever, so grateful to be in this container. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful to share time and care with community and just be in care and community with folks. It was incredible to breathe, move, groove. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly that. Just community. And yeah, just really happy that circles like this exist. It's so well needed, especially during this time. Yeah, for the longest time, I felt like I was kind of the only BIPOC voice in the psychedelic field. But yeah, today just showed me otherwise. So really grateful for that. Thank you guys.
Thank you. And hope to encourage folks, if you have feedback, if you have experiences, if you liked certain things about the breakout room, please share them in the chat. I'm going to hand it off to Ife to share a little bit more about POCPC's work and all the beautiful things that they do over there, and just couldn't be more honored to just be here to hold this and host alongside POCPC. I've just known Ife for since I was pregnant. I went to hold space with Ife in Santa Fe, New Mexico, while 5 years ago with my baby in my belly. And so I just want to say thank you for your kinship, your care, your continued generosity towards me and my family. And we pray generosity for POCPC for all the things that they do. So Ife, if you're down, I would love to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Michaela, and thank you so much for holding this space so beautifully today. Really appreciate it and love that you reminded me of our time in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Feels like such a long time ago, but also not. That was such a beautiful time before, 2020 came and changed everything. So thank you. I also just want to thank all of the presenters here today, TanyaMarck, Logina, Victor, and Noor. You were all amazing, and I'm just so grateful to be in this space with y'all, to be building this really special container on this special 420/Easter holiday. And so I'll share a little bit about myself. My name is Ife Tayo Harvey. I'm Executive Director of the People of Color Psychedelic Collective. We are a organization that does education, community building for people of color interested in learning more about psychedelics and also how to end the war on drugs. And so we do events like this, virtual and in person. And, really what it's about is bringing people together, helping each other feel connected. Like Nora was just sharing that a lot of us feel like we were the only voice of color in the field or, in our little communities. And we're really about, helping people feel less lonely, less isolated in their experiences with healing and psychedelics. So I just want to say thank you all again for taking time out of your Sunday to come hang with us. You could have been doing a million other things, but you chose to be here. So thank you. And also, I hope you give a thank you to yourself just for joining this event because, taking a step toward healing is not always easy. And yeah, just make sure you're thanking yourself for doing something good for yourself today. And of course, feel free to stay in touch with us. www.pocpc.org is our website. You can find all of our socials and sign up for our email newsletter. And of course, if you're feeling moved to support our work financially, you can make a donation. And we are a 501c3 organization, so your donation will be tax deductible. Sorry, I know that was a lot, but thank you guys again so much. We look forward to doing more events like this. This event was sponsored by the Harvard Petrie Flom Project on Psychedelics Law and Regulation. We'll be doing 2 more similar events this year, so stay tuned for that. And yes, thank you again.
All right, Ashe, Aho, please keep your eyes on the chat. Our presenters are sharing their links. Stay connected. I know we wanted to have more time with these amazing people, and you certainly can. I hope everyone has, yeah, a beautiful sunny day, a beautiful springtime. Thank you to our presenters. Let's just give them some love, some Ashe, some build some power. It's important that we are here and visible, and that you all are too. Glaskamati, Ashe Aho.